I've thought frequently about hiring certain individuals that could help me grow my business. And I've looked at consultants, looked at hiring employees, Dennis, but the idea of a fractional leadership position, that's kind of something that's, been around a little while, but I think I'm hearing a lot more about it today. What's your experience in that world?
Same thing. I mean, I think as people are ready to leave the workforce but don't want to completely get out of it, they're moving into this. They used to move into it as a consultant. More of them are moving into the fractional world because the big difference is consultants just kind of strategize. Fractionals, they take a little bit of strategy, but then they also are very tactical to help you solve that problem. And I think it's one that as a business owner, it's something really important to think about because if you really want to grow, and last week we talked about, we had Channing on, where she's at, this kind of takes it even more into how do you help your company grow without having to hire a bunch of employees that in today's world can be a little risky.
Without going into the full engagement of hiring a full-time employee, the idea of fractional leadership to me seems like a very smart idea. Today we have Jonathan Barnes and Wayne Easterwood with Work Heartily, who are going to be joining us today and kind of peeling back a little bit of the mystery of that. And I certainly learned a lot from this conversation. I thought this was an interesting conversation to have. Let's take a listen to it.
Listen in.
WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
Dennis, there comes a time when the amount of work that you have, the maturity of your business, and really where you want to take it, it kind of goes beyond the skill set that you have. Look, I talk to entrepreneurs all the time who are amazing people who really have done some tremendous things for their company. But if you want to get to a certain level, if you want to scale up that business, you really need some help at some point.
At some point, you're going to need other people. I mean, if it's just you don't really have a business. I mean, I always joke, if you're just doing it by yourself, it's really just a hobby.
Mhm.
You might be making money at it, but it's not something that's sustainable. It's not going to be growing. At some point, it's going to fade and go away. You've got to look at, and then the challenge is that do you bring people in that are employees? Or do you find consultants or do you find fractional people that are in roles that could help you do those different things? And I think that's where, as business owners, we get confused of, what is the right solution and where do you turn for these people in today's world? And then you throw in AI and all this other stuff that's going on. It's like, okay, even if I bring the right person in, are they the right person for the long haul of where it's going to go and what I really need and how it's going to change and evolve?
So we brought in a couple experts today who are going to help kind of unravel this whole mystery and this whole idea. Jonathan, Wayne, thanks for coming by today.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
This is great.
Yeah, great guys.
So I think that this is interesting in terms of like for different businesses. And I know personally in my world, I could have used or could use some advice from experts that I'm not really good at. I'm pretty good at understanding technology. I'm pretty good at leading a company, but in terms of like finances and maybe some of the operations pieces, that's not my expertise. You guys have a business that really kind of addresses that. Can kind of step into that a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you all do?
Sure. Yeah. So I started the business about 6 years ago or so, almost 6 years, right in the middle of 2020, which is a great time to start a business, April of 2020. But, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's there are different paths to go by when you're starting a business and when you're growing a business. And like you said, Dennis, you can start a business by yourself and run it. But if it's just you, there's not beyond you, there's not a lot of value to what's going on besides yourself. And so if you decide to leave it, then the business kind of dries up. And so when you're thinking about scaling or growing a business, you do have options, like you said, consultants or hiring somebody full time. And one of the things that I've found in my career over the years is, somebody had mentioned, hey, you need some help with finances with my previous company. I was like, well, great. I know I need to hire a CFO. Like, well, actually, you can hire a fractional CFO. And I had no clue what fractional even meant. And what I came to realize is having expertise that came in on a regular basis that was embedded on the team for that specific executive function really helped me understand my numbers. And then I ended up hiring with that specific company a fractional chief marketing officer. And that helped with branding and messaging and helped me with more lead generation. beyond just what I was doing myself with making phone calls and, hey, would you please work with me? And so when I started Work Heartily, our company, it was really more of we can provide the service for growing businesses that might not know it's available, to have embedded executives that are helping with their expertise in those specific lanes, but doing so on a fractional basis so they don't have to hire somebody full time because they don't need it. Usually, the small businesses in that smaller revenue range, it's a smaller executive team or a small team. They've got a business that they're making money, they like to grow, and they have a capacity to do more or a desire to do more, but their capacity is limited, I should say.
So
And
And Jonathan, if
yeah,
as you look at it, with fractional, there's also the consultant side. But
sure.
in my mind, they're two different worlds. I mean, can you kind
Yep,
of share with the
Totally.
listeners what's the difference between a fractional and a consultant?
Yeah, that's great. I'll start, Wayne. You can end if you want me to. But I see there's kind of three continuums. You have a business coach, you have consulting, and you have business coach, you have consulting, and you have fractionals. And I would say business coach is great because it's like getting you as an executive to understand what's going on. A consultant is saying, hey, I've got this specific expertise in your specific industry, and I'm going to tell you what to do. You should do this. Here's a list. Here you go. I've done my assessment. It's time for you to do it. The fractional is really a good melding of a lot of those components, getting you to understand what you need to do, having the expertise to say, this is what works in that industry. And by the way, the fractional is, let me do it for you. Let me help you do this with you as an embedded member on your team. And so, a lot of times people kind of conflate fractional with consulting. And there's a little bit of consulting in there, of course, because you've got expertise. But the fractional is really there to be embedded, to work on alongside you, to be that right hand person with the executive. Wayne,
Right.
did
They
I?
they they bring the
Yeah,
tactical part of as well. I mean, that's what
right,
yeah, they're
consultants
doing
are.
it.
Consultants are great to come in and tell you what you ought to do, but then they just
right,
leave. And then it's like, okay, that was interesting, but it's like I can't get it done.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think from the very beginning, we talked about, we didn't have a word for it yet, but we talked about how do we ensure that we help them get things done. I worked in corporate world for a long time, and I would hire consultants, or I'd hire someone that would come in and they'd give us a to-do list, and darn, months later, we hadn't really gotten anywhere on that because we didn't figure out why, whatever the reason. So we now call that embedded ownership. And in fact, even when we began to talk about our pricing model, how are we going to price this? We really lean toward a fixed versus an hourly, because we don't want the leaders to thinking, man, is this a bad enough problem I can call Wayne? I just want them to know I own it. I own it. They look to me like I'm part of the team. I am part of the team. I care about it. And I'll end in this. I can honestly say 99% of the engagements that I've been involved in the last 6 years that we've been working together, I've really been sad when it's ended. I didn't want it to
yeah,
end. It was a natural end. It was the right end. They were ready to move on to the next thing, which was the goal. We accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, yet, darn, I'm not going to get to work with him anymore. Darn, I'm not, because I love the direction. So we do have this embedded ownership where we care and are part of the team. We try to make that really central to the way we work.
And Wayne or Jonathan, I mean, I'm assuming too, it's one where you're kind of a bridge, especially if they're small to mid-size. If they're growing,
Yeah.
eventually they may bring a full-time person in-house. It could be one of your
yeah,
team members that becomes that full-time
Yeah.
person, but
If it's growth,
but not
that's
always.
probably where they're headed. Go
right.
ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I would say, thinking about a couple of years ago, we had a fractional engagement. It was a manufacturing company. They needed a COO. They did not, honestly, they didn't even know what they needed. And so we had a fractional engagement with them, and CEO came in and helped kind of fix some issues and get them on a better weekly cadence and understanding KPIs and understand where they needed to go. But, their our goal and their goal to be embedded there was to find the next COO, to get them to get their company to a place where it was time for them to hire a full-time COO. So part of our help was to, yes, fix issues and get them on a good trajectory, but also help them screen and hire the right person for the next level. And it was a great handoff. But that's usually the goal for fractional, is that bridge, like you said, Dennis. That makes total sense.
So let's flip the other way. So I'm a business owner, and I don't understand this fractional thing at all. I can think of all kinds of reasons that they come up with. Like, what do you hear of from business owners why they don't want to bring in a fractional or even a consultant. I mean, a lot of times they try to do it themselves on everything.
Well, there's a certain profile of executive that's the smartest person in the room. Honestly, they'll probably white knuckle it through whatever. They probably won't ever. They'll probably not grow. Honestly,
Hmm.
so that profile is. We don't want to work with them. I think consultants probably don't want to work with them. That's an attitude. What we're looking for, and I think what works well in business is understanding yourself and saying what am I really good at? What are my strengths? What are my areas that I thrive in and give me a lot of passion and energy about? And what things I just don't really want to deal with, but I know they're important. And who around me and my team can help me. And if you don't have that person in your team to grow up into that role, then a fractional makes sense for them. And so it's really more of an education of the marketplace. Like, hey, this is an option for you. It might not be perfect for you, so let's talk about it.
Right.
But I think it all depends on the attitude of the executive.
And I would assume that it's what you hit on the head where you kind of have to sit down and kind of do a sketch of what your landscape looks like of your people and where are the gaps. And then,
Yeah.
a lot of people, I think, default to, oh, we need to hire this person. And I think today's world with AI and all this other stuff, that may not be the best solution because the person may be really good at something today. Benny and I were looking here a minute ago of the top 40 positions that probably are going to be impacted by AI. It's a lot of stuff that you're talking about. It's the tactical stuff that bookkeeping, finance, customer service, all that. It's like, why would you hire someone internal that you're going to have to probably let go at some point in time where you could bring a fractional in because you still need the people and the oversight of it, but
Right.
you may also be incorporating some AI or some technology to take you to the whole other level. So you're not adding more people as you double your business.
That's right. One of the things we use, we love the Working Genius framework, which is Patrick Lencioni's assessment that kind of focuses in on what somebody's genius is and their competencies and frustrations. And so, like I told you earlier, establishing a profile of what the owner or the business executive is doing and what their assessment looks like, and then overlaying that with their existing team,
Yeah.
and then thinking about the priorities of the business and saying, well, we really need a marketing focus, or we really have an operations issue here. Having the option to understand what the landscape is first, and then saying, well, let's think about options here. Like you mentioned, AI. I mean, AI is going to be everything. I think of AI as, just the next email. Everybody's going to be using it. It is in some capacity going to quote unquote eliminate some positions, but it's going to elevate other positions. And I think a strategic mind, an executive that can think through how this impacts the business, if you're a growth minded business, it does, you will need that strategy and the implementation of that strategy to really grow if you're thinking through, navigating the next 2, 3, 5 years.
Right. Because I mean, there's lots of changes happening. I mean, I know just in our business, there's things that we're doing that we're using AI, but we're also using people, and it's a
Yeah.
constant evolving process. And so it's just what it looked like 3 years ago compared to this year, and what it'll look like 3 years from now is going to be radically different. And
Agreed.
adding a bunch of employees may not be the most effective way to go, but bringing in some fractional people that fit certain roles are ones to think about. Benny, I mean,
Yeah.
have you dealt with fractionals much? Have you worked in the fractional world much?
Yeah, and it's funny. I was taking some notes here earlier off of what you guys were saying, and it's interesting from when I've seen fractionals come in. This really is something that has to be recognized from the top down, and the leadership has to really have a buy-in on it. I've seen people incorporate this, and not every executive bought into this whole idea. I guess the question I'll have for you all is, um, I'm sure you're talking to people they recognize and they understand that they have to bring in somebody to kind of lend a hand and help out. But how do you get them from being treated like an outsider, like a visitor to their business? I have employees like, oh, that guy's just a consultant, or that guy, he doesn't really work here. He's only going to be here for a few months. And how do you let them know that, hey, this is something that is really key and pivotal. This is somebody who's going to really help us along. What's kind of the way you guys view that? Because I'm sure you've dealt with this before. As
Yes.
an outsider, I've seen it, and people, it's like it was like a waste of money for them if they didn't have 100% buy-in all the way top to bottom.
Is it going to sound silly? but there's some tactical things and there's some attitude things. Tactically, it's best if we become a part of all the meetings, that we have an email address of the organization, that we're part of their Teams chat, Google chat, whatever. So there isn't a visible difference. The second is really attitude, using we, us, our. I learned that early on. And those kind of language, speaking of yourself as part of the team and working as part of the team, begins to grow that. And it'll expose those folks that, maybe don't trust you, but that's the way it is with a new employee as well.
Yeah. And I would say I'll add to that too, Wayne. That's exactly what I was going to say. The other thing is just from the very beginning when we're talking, hey, this is an opportunity for us to work together. It's really getting buy-in from top down, and saying, hey, this is something we're really excited about. And it's not going to work unless it's a two-way street here. We're going to be putting in the time and effort to be embedded, and we need the same thing from everybody, because our ultimate goal is for you to grow and to get to this, whatever the project or initiative that we need to complete, or the trajectory that you need for revenue or for this new integration or whatever it looks like. And so getting that from the executive from the very beginning. And I usually I'm usually the tip of the spear when it comes to, new discussions, new calls from people, and just, hey, we're here to answer questions and figure this out together.
Do you give them, or I should say, does leadership for a company, do they give you, would you recommend they give ownership of hiring or making some changes, or how would that look? And how do you decide that in terms of what, I want to be kind of choose my words here, but what kind of control they exert over the business and how that looks?
Usually within the executive function, if you have embedded ownership as a fractional executive, they're giving you a lot of leeway there. And it's high trust. I think that comes, there's a continuum of trust that kind of builds on each other. As long as, and the longer you're working with somebody, you start having more, as a fractional or as an executive, you give that fractional more leeway and you trust them even more. But it's always starts with a conversation with the executive team. And like Wayne said, we're embedded on those teams. I mean, I know Wayne was just on a board meeting with another company, one of his engagements earlier this week. And so, hey, we're discussing, he's in charge of this specific function, but he's also at the board table with all the other executive leaders of that company. And so yes, they have a lot of leeway and they have a lot of trust given to them, but it all depends on how you build that, and discussing that from the very beginning is really important.
I'd love to touch back on one thing y'all said. You talked about, Dennis, I think you were saying this seems to be a directional kind of thing. It caused me to remember when we started in the pandemic and we started sending people home, and I started to hear some of management talking about, I'm not sure what people are doing. I said then, our job descriptions generally in corporate America don't really describe what value is from this. We thought butts in seats meant productivity. And I said, we've got to transition to understand, what am I asking this employee to deliver in exchange for my pay, their time? What is the delivery? What is the value they're bringing to the company? So now we've gotten to where we're looking at both AI and we're also looking at more remote work. We've got to be able to say, I need this slice. It has this value to me. That's why I think directionally, I think fractional or less than traditional full-time W-2 employment will grow as people imagine ways to find that arrangement that they have with someone about value.
I think you're right on, and I think especially the younger workforce is going to like that concept because they don't want to be pigeonholed into doing one thing,
right,
8 to 5. And so as a business owner, it allows you to evolve. All these companies that are saying everybody's got to come back to the corporate office. In my mind, that's being driven by the fact that they've got a bunch of brick and mortar that they've got to pay for, so they got to justify it. I think
that's a pendulum swing.
Yeah,
it feels
exactly.
like.
And those that find that hybrid mix, and then that's where fractional comes in, because you may not have access to all those people, or there may be someone that's sitting in Dallas, Texas, that's more productive and can give you the return versus sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, where my office is. So there's
Right.
just different things that you can approach it and look at it. And I think the real key thing for people the listeners to understand, and I think we talked about this, is that fractional brings a little bit of consulting, but it's really the tactical parts. It
It
helps you
is.
actually deliver because, again, we all worked corporate America. I remember many of those consultants that came in and they left us a book that
Yeah.
when you hit on 6 months later, we had never even opened the book. And so it's like, okay, we just spent all that money, nothing happened.
Very
This is where that
expensive 3-ring binder.
Yep.
Exactly.
exactly. And this is
Hmm.
where that fractional helps kind of give the strategy, but also they're accountable to deliver and help you get the results that you're looking for, which is radically different. And I think as a business owner, those are things to be looking for and finding where are those gaps that you've got and, find groups like you guys to help solve those problems.
And I want to go back to something that you guys had mentioned earlier too. And I think it's really it's important to be aware of this. Is that you know if you have a purpose for what this individual is going to be doing, and look, we're looking to bring somebody on permanently, and this person is going to be here to be able to transition to us, bringing in a world of experience that we couldn't afford. Yeah, I was talking to a client of mine not too long ago, and he was kind of belaboring the point that to bring on somebody for at least a quarter million, $300,000 was just like such a gamble for him that he didn't
Mm.
know. Well, I said, well, you ever thought about the fractional stuff? And this is like, he was asking about CFO, which I have no idea. And he said, yeah, I just don't know. Does that work really well? And we talked through it, and he eventually, he kind of decided that that would be a good way to do it. And I think it worked out very well for him. I need to sync up back with him, find out how that worked out. But the whole idea to be able to get somebody of that value, a really hefty salary for a fraction of the cost,
Right.
that's an attractive idea. You really get the ability to bring on somebody with a lot of experience.
Yeah, you kind of
I'm
get to
hoping that works.
test drive not the person, but the role, because sometimes these are new roles in your organization. And
Right.
so you think you need someone 40 hours a week and you find out they really are going to probably work 10 hours a week. So do I really
Mhm.
need to pay someone 40? Maybe I need to hire that fractional. Maybe I do need to hire two lower pay people to do more of the
Right.
tactical stuff.
That's
Um,
right.
and so it allows you to test drive and kind of see, and you may find out you get in there, I don't even need this was not what I thought. I need more operational. I don't
I had
need
both of those types of engagements in my history. One I think of right away was 3 organizations merging together.
yeah, those are great
It was
ones.
people, process, technology that all had to get there so they could be one organization. And right now, I'm with an organization that is strategically divesting, and they're going to shrink. And then they have to sort of, once they right size, they're going to have to figure out their people, process, and technology to do it well.
Mhm.
And both of those are exciting and fun, but really hard work. And you got, that skill to do that may not be what they need long term. We'll see.
Right, right. No, you're
And I would
exactly
say
right.
it's one thing that's really interesting, Wayne, too. Both of those are outcomes based, completely different outcomes. One was merger, one's more divesting, but that's outcome productivity versus just the position or title.
Right.
Mm.
And I think that's a different way of looking at it. And I think that's what we're seeing in the marketplace as we've been, in this work for the past several years.
You know, Dennis, as I was kind of thinking about this and, being able to bring somebody on board, it's not a process that I'd take lightly. Jonathan, Wayne, let me ask you guys, do you have any tips or ideas that maybe an executive who's thinking about bringing on, a fractional leadership C-suite type of position into the company? What kind of tips could you give somebody who's looking to do that?
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is do a lot of research. There are several great reputable fractional firms out there, and but every single one of them has a philosophy, and some of them have lead with industry expertise and industry focus. Some people lead with the approach. We happen to be in that productivity outcomes for small to medium sized businesses approach with embedded ownership. So we lead with embedded ownership. We want to leave things better than we found it. We know that there's an end in mind. And so I would say do several calls and talk to several different firms and then ask them about testimonials and what kind of businesses they've worked with, especially in industries. Industry is important, but also I would say the size businesses and
Right.
the approach, and what's that first 30 days look like? How do you become embedded if that's important to you as a leader? Like, how do you get that person in on your team? And so understanding what their tactics are of how they're implementing a new fractional into the team is really, really important. So I would start there.
I would also think, I mean, it's a relationship. So, I mean, it's making sure you like the people that are going to be there working with you. I mean, the last thing you
Yeah.
want to do is have someone you don't like. I mean, so, and
That's a
again,
good point. Yeah, it goes without being said, but I'm glad you said it.
and a lot of times it may not be the person selling or you're talking to may not be the person that's coming in to be the fractional. So it's like,
Yeah,
get to know them, get to understand
yeah,
them. And again, you don't want someone that's a yes person. You want someone that is going to challenge you because you're trying to bring someone in to help you grow the business or do
that's
things
right.
differently. So,
Right.
That's
um,
right, Dennis. I would say part of our process is not just a discovery call with a nice person with a smile and tells you nice things, but a part of our process is like, hey, let's get an intake, and then let's get you matched up with a solid fractional that potentially would be in that seat, or their teammate would be in that seat. So they can ask the questions, get really a more deep dive into what's going on in the business and the pain that you're having or experiencing, and what outcomes you're looking for.
yeah.
And so that's really part of our process before we even start sending proposals out and start throwing numbers out. It's really like, hey, what needs to be done immediately.
I mean, this is great. I mean, I think, for our listeners, it's one of those ones, we talked about, it can be a consultant, fractional, or an employee. Personally, I think fractional is a great way to go because it lets you kind of test drive it, experience it versus, hiring a full-time employee in today's world is pretty risky. And consultants, I love you all out there if you're listening as consultants, but you typically just give binders and leave. And so it's important that the people you're looking for actually help you tactically solve the problem. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in corporate America today.
And maybe just an add on to that is we also continue to build our strategic partners. So we're narrowly focused in just a few lanes, but our customers have problems outside those lanes.
Mm.
So we've got some strategic partners that we stay in close contact with, that we refer to, and we can bring as part of an engagement or let them pick up the ball on an area that we don't necessarily cover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's part of having a good solid network that
Right.
we've been building
Yeah.
over the years.
This is such a fascinating topic, and I think it's critically vital for a number of listeners out there who may be at that point, and they might need, to take a look at this and consider for their business. And I wish we could talk in depth more a little bit about it, but I know there'd be some folks out there, Jonathan, Wayne, that would love to be able to talk to you a little bit more in depth and be able
Sure.
to get some information. What's the best way for anyone listening to be able to get a hold of you?
We go to our website, which is workheartily, like your heart, ILY.com. So workheartily.com, but should be able to contact us from there. You can set up a quick discovery call or just a strategy session just to chat with us with a scheduling link. That's probably the easiest way. Both Wayne and I are very active on LinkedIn. So Jonathan Barnes and Wayne Easterwood, and we got a bunch of team members on LinkedIn as well. So those are the easiest ways to contact us and chat with us. We can share some war stories with you if you'd like. We got a lot of them.
Jonathan, Wayne, work heartily. Thank you guys for stopping by today. This is a topic that I've been looking to dig into, and I learned quite a bit. Thanks so much for stopping by today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks
It's a
for
pleasure.
having us.
Guys, take care.
Take care.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.